But let's say hi to everyone and thanks for joining us on our talk about let's talk about depression series today. And the topic is Am I okay? And if you have joined us on our previous Let's Talk About Anxiety series that has been held over the past few Wednesday night, it's good to see you back with us again this time around for our new series of forums. So we're just gonna get into our talk today. So this series of Let's Talk forums are brought to you by Viria Community Services and supported by Temasek Foundation's Stay Prepared initiative. So Stay Prepared helps to prepare the Singaporean community for emergencies like major accidents, natural disasters, pandemics, severe haze, or terrorist attacks. It's supported by the Temasek Emergency Preparedness Fund and managed by Temasek Foundation. So I just want to introduce give ourselves an introduction to us today. So I'm Natasha. I'm a clinical psychologist with Viria Community Services, and I'm joined today by my colleague Diana. Who's gonna say hi?
Yeah, hi, I'm Diana. I'm also a psychologist with VCS.
Yes. So mainly our role is to work with people who are experiencing mental health difficulties in the community, and this forum was really brought to you to create more mental health awareness and provide tips to cope with anxiety, low mood, and other mental health difficulties during this COVID-19 pandemic. And the forum will usually run for 1 hour, and the format will be similar to previous sessions with a talk at the beginning and then a Q&A session at the end. So we encourage you to type any questions you have along the way in the chat box and interact with other participants if you would like to. I think people have found it quite helpful to just type their thoughts or comments as they go along as well. And just to cover our ground rules, our session will be recorded for training purposes. So if you don't feel comfortable turning on your video, that's totally fine. A recording button has just been switched on. So if you feel comfortable, just click the blue button to continue. And we'll be muting all participants during this talk to minimize disruption. So if you have any questions, just remember to type them in your chat box below. And our moderator will be monitoring the chat and will have to remove participants who make any inappropriate comments. Okay. So just going to go through an overview of today's session on depression. We'll be covering low mood versus depression and some differences between the two. We're not really going to go into details about different mood disorders and diagnosis, as most of us need a professional assessment to determine this. We also wanted to disclaim that we won't really be focusing on what causes depression today, as there's so many factors and things that contribute to depression, including past experiences, history of substance use, personality, coping styles, family history and dynamics, or even I think one common one is whether people experience a chemical imbalance in the brain. But it's really hard to tell what causes which, and it's usually quite a combination of different factors. So instead today we're going to focus on actually what keeps depression and low mood going, and what we can do to manage these using psychologically informed techniques. So before we dive right in, I'm going to ask guys our first question. So wondering how has your mood changed from the end of circuit breaker until now? So what have you noticed in the past month since we went through phase 1 and then quite quickly going on to phase 2, and we are now kind of still getting used to life after circuit breaker, going out with the new changes. And we're going to share our results once most of us have participated in the poll. So responses are coming in right now. Okay, we're just going to wait a couple more seconds for more people to respond, and then we're going to share. Okay, all right. Okay, so I think the majority indicated there hasn't been much change since the end of circuit breaker. And then quite a lot of you are feeling much better than usual, a little bit better than usual, also much better than usual. And then I guess it's quite uniform, feeling maybe also some of you feeling a bit lower than usual, feeling much lower. And just we're gonna maybe go through a few things that might um, give you guys a better understanding of why this might be and how your mood might have been affected over the past month. So I'm just going to hand over the time to my colleague Diana, who's going to go through what is low mood.
Okay. Thank you, Natasha. Okay, so what is low mood? Everyone feels low or down from time to time, and having a low mood is actually a very common and normal reaction to stressful life events. So, for instance, some of you might notice that maybe during the COVID-19 pandemic, things might have become like more stressful for you, and you might notice that your mood was affected by this time. And some signs of you experiencing a low mood are feeling sad or upset, feeling more tired than usual, or having difficulty concentrating, or losing the motivation to do things, losing the interest in what you used to enjoy. And you might even find that your sleep or appetite are affected as well. So with low mood, we often find that it will pass after a few days when you start to do things that help to improve your mood, be it doing something that you enjoy or talking to other people. So when does low mood become depression? So unlike low mood, depression lasts for a very long time and the feeling is almost constant, and it can arise for seemingly no reason, and it doesn't usually go away on its own as well. So depression is actually much more than low mood. And on top of the symptoms of low mood, people who experience depression may feel a sense of worthlessness, hopelessness, or guilt. And depression also affects your everyday life significantly and causes significant distress. So, for example, it may affect your functioning at work or school or your relationships with other people. And with depression, you may also have thoughts of self-harm or suicide. So depression is kind of like having a black dog follow you around all the time. Now we're going to show you this video. Some of you might have seen it before, but we think that it explains the experience of depression quite well.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learned not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks, so it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants, so go for a walk or a run and leave the muck behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Okay, so we hope that that video gave you all a better picture of what depression is like. So how did you all find the video? Do you have any thoughts or comments on it? Feel free to type it in the chat box.
I think when I first watched the video, also as someone who is being trained with depression, and how to help support people with depression, I found it a really good video, and like just describing how it might be like this black dog following you around. Yeah, we found it quite relatable. That's why I decided to share it with you guys today.
Yeah, so some of you may find that it relates to your own experience or to your friends or family members' experiences to some extent. But the good news is that with the right support, anyone can learn how to manage their depression and in a way that works best for yourself. So moving on, with depression, as mentioned in the video, it doesn't matter who you are, but depression affects millions of people and in different ways as well. I see some comments in the chat box as well. Okay. Relatable, and yeah, it is very important that we need to do is break the stigmatization in society on mental health, and that's something that people from getting help. Yeah, I think this is very true, and it's very important to reach out to people as well to help them. Okay, so I noticed that there were a couple of questions. If it's okay, our moderator will collate some of the questions later, and then we will answer your questions at the end of the presentation as well. Okay, so with depression, yeah, it doesn't matter who you are, but it affects millions of people in different ways. And in fact, research also shows that depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Research in Singapore has also shown that 1 in 7 people have actually experienced a mental disorder in their lifetime. And out of this 1 in 7, out of these people, the most common mental health disorder that was experienced was major depressive disorder, with 1 in 16 people experiencing it in their lifetime. So you can see that depression is quite a common experience, and if you find that you or your loved ones are experiencing symptoms of depression, then you or they are not alone. It's very understandable to experience depression in response to extremely stressful life events. Okay. So now I'll pass over to my colleague Natasha to talk about what maintains depression.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a few overlapping factors that actually may keep slow mood and depression going. We're just going to cover 5 of the main ones today that can be relatable to some of you. So the first one is rumination or overthinking. Some people describe this as kind of spiraling in their negative thoughts. And this term rumination is when we experience lots and lots of negative, sad, or really dark thoughts about what has happened in our past, about ourselves in the future. So I'm just going to illustrate rumination quite quickly here. So it usually starts off with a negative thought in relation to a trigger, like for example, finding out that you have made a mistake, and then getting a thought like, I can't even do this simple task properly. And then leads on to, what did I do wrong? Nothing's working out. There's no point in trying. Everything's hopeless. I'm so useless. So really, a lot of these thoughts can come on really quickly, and can, before you know it, can spiral into something really dark. And it's really hard to stop at times when people find themselves in this process of rumination. And when we have more and more of these negative thoughts, it actually increases the distress that we feel, and also how low that we feel, and can also feed into depressed mood and low mood. And the next is when we neglect physical health. So there's actually a really strong link between mental and physical health, and they really influence each other in both directions. So when we are already experiencing low mood or depression, we tend to exercise less, sleep worse, maybe eat not as well as we usually do. And then when this happens, we start experiencing more and more negative thoughts about ourselves, feeling worse, and then kind of sinking lower into depression. The third thing that keeps depression going is also the lack of motivation. And this is a really big one when people are experiencing low mood and depression. So and this happens when people like really want to do things but find that they can't, feeling like lack of energy, and just being very lethargic and unable to even start doing something. And then when this happens, also makes people feel really bad about themselves, and also can worsen your mood. The fourth factor that can keep low mood and depression going is what we call running away or avoidance. And we're going to go into a bit more detail later about these traps and how depression can trap us in our avoidance cycle. And avoidance is a form of coping that involves like kind of running away from thinking or feeling things that are really stressful, uncomfortable, or upsetting. This can often make problems grow bigger, increase frustration, and overwhelm feelings, which then also feed into depression. And the last factor that we're going to cover today is the balance of activities, as what we do can influence how we feel. So when we're feeling really low or really depressed, I think I'm quite guilty of this as well. When I feel really sad, I kind of listen to more and more sad music, and then end up feeling sadder and sadder. And also with the recent circuit breaker and changes in our lifestyle, there's so many things that we had to do differently. No dining out, no shopping or seeing loved ones, and then staying at home much more than usual. And with these restrictions, it really comes with a lot of changes to our routine and the activities that we can do, which can really affect how we feel and how we cope with depression. So we're going to cover some tips onto how we can manage these 5 factors today and keep the black dog of depression at bay. And thinking about these 5 factors as kind of petals of a really vicious flower of depression. And to be able to kind of pick off these petals one by one, the more we understand how those impact on how we feel. So before we get into it, we're going to launch another poll or question to ask you guys about which of these petals have affected your mood, or which of these like factors that you find has kept low mood going, or if you're feeling depressed, what has kept it going for you? And if you can think of something that we didn't cover we're not covering here today, feel free to type them in the chat box. And so I think a lot of people, these are just 5, and it definitely more than 5 things can keep depression going, either through a combination of things. So if I'm not covering them here today, I think just sharing in the chat box, I think other people can relate as well. Just gonna see the responses that are coming in, and we will stop after most of you have responded. Okay, I think the responses are slowing down, so we got 3 more seconds, and then we'll share the results. Okay, so overwhelming response to the rumination and overthinking, and yeah, I think a close second is the lack of motivation, and then running away, and then having a balance of activities and neglecting physical health. So I think lots of people are sounds like finding the rumination and overthinking keeps depression going. So I think this leads us nicely into how can we escape rumination. So from what we know about rumination, can often start as quite a helpful process to gain insights or reflect on what has happened in the past, to maybe for self-improvement or how you can do things a bit better in the future, or as a process that can start off as like you're trying to solve a problem. So thinking about different options and actually what could I've done. But then inadvertently, we can get quite stuck in this cycle of negative or self-critical or really hopeless thoughts for hours and hours, and then finding it really hard to get back out of once you are stuck in the cycle. And I think a lot of us can relate. It's like sometimes it's quite unconscious when we are doing it, and until we realize it's too late, and then we are really feeling really hopeless and despairing. So I think just being aware, it's really important to just be aware of this process that when it comes up, and just notice actually when am I prone to kind of ruminating or overthinking? Is it when I'm alone, or is it when it's at night, or when something bad has happened? So just catching what triggers rumination and catching yourself early so that you can exit out of the process. And this is really important when we're trying to cope with rumination. And once we have caught ourselves early on in the process, then we can then think about doing something different. And it can just be a really simple thing like going to splash water on your face, taking a shower, going out for a walk, or just watching a video to take your mind off this the train of negative thoughts. And what people notice is that the earlier we catch ourselves in the process, and it's the easier to get out. And just also another tip to help yourself catch yourself and exit the process, especially if you're thinking, I'm not sure if I'm like trying to solve a problem here or am I ruminating, is asking yourself, is this a problem that I can solve now? And quite a useful guide is using a time limit to this process. So is this a problem that I can solve now? And if after 15 minutes you decided that, okay, yes, I can solve this problem, and I have a good solution to this, and I've finished brainstorming and I'm going to act on it. And this is something that we can act on quite quickly. So if you notice yourself doing this, it's good to just take action immediately. But if you find yourself going round and round, not being able to stop, and then gets more and more despairing and hopeless, then maybe it will be a good tip to, okay, I'm going to exit from the process now. I'm going to focus on the present. So we covered this 5-4-3-2-1 technique in our anxiety forum, which is just to bring yourself to what's around you. So thinking about 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. Just to ground yourself and also help to exit the process of negative thinking. And also if you have loved ones or people around that can help with occupying yourself or doing activities together, that's really a good technique as well, just to get their support on things. And we're going to target the next petal around neglecting physical health and how people are less likely to exercise if they're feeling really low or feeling really depressed. And also thinking about that, similar to that video of the black dog where they said that like actually exercise can be as effective as antidepressants for mild to moderate depression, and this has been shown in quite a lot of research studies as well. So thinking about how we can start using exercise to manage our mood, because exercise can release symptoms of depression by releasing endorphins that enhance mood, taking our mind off negative thoughts, improving sleep, and also indirectly through increasing confidence and connecting with other people. So it's important to just start at your level and where you're at so that it's not overwhelming, and also pick something you enjoy so that it helps with a bit of the motivation and to just get going. And it can be a bit daunting at first, especially if you haven't been exercising for a long time. But just also some things that you can start off with, like just a 5-minute walk around your block downstairs, or just stretching when you're in between shows that you're watching, or listening to music and moving together for 10 minutes at a time. And what research has shown about amount of exercise that will be helpful for depression is around 2.5 hours of moderate intensity activities. So this can include brisk a week. So brisk walking, riding a bicycle, doing some sports like badminton or tennis, and hiking or rollerblading or swimming. Or you can choose to do 1 hour and 15 minutes of high intensity activities, vigorous activities like jogging, running, swimming real fast, riding a bike up a hill. Also sports like football or rugby. I know some of these are quite hard to do at the moment, but also thinking about what's achievable during this time and within our current restrictions. And if you have a physical health conditions, like we really encourage you to speak with your doctor or a physiotherapist on the level of exercise that's suitable for you. So really just checking in with them about things that you're doing and also at your level. And the third petal that we want to talk about today is how can we increase motivation? And I think the most important thing about motivation is to understand actually where does it come from, because often we feel like we need to feel motivated before we do something, and it's easy to start taking action when the motivation is there beforehand. But if we're feeling down and then following the lead of our mood or depression, we'll continue to feel like that the motivation is not there, and want to avoid or isolate ourselves or stay in bed for a long time. So if we are relying on our feelings of motivation to start, we might be actually waiting quite a long time and can get into quite a vicious cycle there. So instead, we might want to start thinking about activating ourselves first by doing, and then seeing if the motivation follows. Actually, why would this be a thing? Because sometimes motivation like just changes the state of our brain and can help us to feel better quite immediately as well. And secondly, the more that we activate, the more situations we find ourselves in that can give us positive experiences. Like if you are like missing something that you have craved for since circuit breaker has ended, just going out to get that, or just going out for a walk and seeing how much the grass has grown. And these positive experiences can actually motivate us to do more. And I think the concept here is a bit like jump starting a car. Like when you're feeling a bit stuck or feeling a bit down, you maybe need just keep in mind like, okay, I need to start first, and then I might be running. I can keep going after that. And some people have found maybe asking a friend or family member to help support with the push at the beginning, just to get the ball rolling as well. So thinking about a time in the past where maybe you felt like I wasn't really up for that, and then just doing it anyway, and how you felt afterwards. And keeping in mind that also it's really important to celebrate the small victories and any small steps, as these, I think just acknowledging and celebrating these victories can really encourage you and remind you that you can overcome things one step at a time and increase your confidence. And also to keep the rewards in mind, that even though your thoughts and feelings are shouting, no, I'm not ready now, no, it's not a good time, that maybe doing something a bit different or just doing that even though you don't feel like it might increase your motivation and how you're feeling, or how good you're feeling afterwards. So keeping those things in mind. Okay, and then we're also thinking about the traps of depression. So TRAP stands for trigger, response, and avoidance pattern. Traps are really attractive because they enable us to avoid things that brings us strong feelings and responses. So one example of a trigger might be to start, okay, we receive the text to go out with your friends, or like reading the news about COVID-19 and whether there's a vaccine or whether we can get back to normal as well, and feeling really hopeless about it all. And then the response might be feeling upset and overwhelmed, or having thoughts like, okay, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll go out when I feel better, maybe tomorrow, or even having thoughts like, actually, what's the point of doing this anyway when everything seems so hopeless? And then a typical avoidance patterns might be to escape from certain situations, withdraw from social contact that can increase loneliness and isolation, or put off doing tasks like applying for jobs or procrastinating on physical activity and even rest and relaxation. So it's really important to be aware of like some of the traps that we might fall into because of our low mood and depression. Because in the short term, the traps actually help us to avoid strong feelings or even bring us some sense of relief uh, from the stress of the situation. But in the long term, it makes us feel worse or increases negative thoughts and causes us to miss out on rewarding opportunities and experiences, and ultimately maintains low mood and depression. So from being aware of the traps that that depression might lure us into, or low mood might lure us into, we can then start engaging in things that we can tackle immediately, even though it's stressful at first. But then holding in mind longer term benefits, like going out might bring us a sense of connection to other people. And ultimately just to engage in activities versus avoiding them, even though they might be stressful. And I'm just going to pass the time now to Diana, who's going to talk through a more structured way on how we can engage in activities and escape the depression traps.
Okay. So this brings us like quite smoothly into the next petal that we want to pluck off, which is the balance of activities. So as Natasha explained, with depression, sometimes we find ourselves caught in a trap because we feel upset or overwhelmed. And when we are feeling depressed, we may find it more difficult to do things because we feel tired or unmotivated or hopeless. And this leads to a lot of avoidance. So the next factor that really maintains depression is, doing less of the things that matter to us. So because we stop doing things that matter to us, this we get a lot less out of our lives because we don't get the same meaning or enjoyment in our lives as we did before. And then this in turn feeds into low mood and creating a vicious cycle between the three. So how do we break out of this cycle is actually by doing more of the things that matter to us. And that's the whole idea of behavioral activation. So with behavioral activation, we can encourage ourselves to start to do more activities that matter, and we can slowly start to get more out of our lives. And this will in turn lead to us feeling a lot better. And you can see that the vicious cycle can actually turn into something a bit more positive with a better mood. So the whole idea again of behavioral activation is to incorporate activities into our schedule in order to lift our mood. But when we think of behavioral activation, it's important to think of activities that are personally meaningful to us. So it's not just about doing more things, but it's really about doing more things that we personally find meaningful, like enjoyable, or gives us like a personal sense of achievement. And this can be very different for different people. So there are 4 different types of activities that actually, we find that actually lifts our mood. And these are valued activities and ace activities, which might sound familiar to some of you. So to give some examples, firstly with value activities, these are activities that we find very meaningful in our lives. So for example, if relationships with other people is something that we personally value, or we think that relationships with other people are important to us, then some valued activities could be, spending time with friends or family, or doing something nice for someone else. And these are actually activities that bring us a lot closer to our values and provide some sort of direction in our lives, kind of like a compass in a way. And the next kind of activities are activities that give us a sense of achievement. So these are activities that make us feel like we accomplished something. And most of the time, it's something like quite practical that we feel we have accomplished. It could be like completing a task at work or at school, or even something as simple as like cleaning your room or doing the household chores. And the next is activities that give us a sense of connection or a sense of closeness to other people. And these could be, activities that we do together with other people. So perhaps, again, like spending time with friends or family, for example, or doing a shared activity together. And the last of the ACE activities are actually activities that give us a sense of enjoyment. So these are activities that we enjoy for the sake of the activity itself. It could be like a personal hobby, say, if you enjoy sports and you used to do it a lot, or if you enjoy arts and crafts, these are activities that we find fun and enjoyable. And you might find that these things usually overlap as well. So you might find that an activity that gives you a sense of accomplishment is also something that you really value. So for example, if you did something related to your work or your job, it might give you a sense of achievement. But career advancement and your education might be something that you really value. So that's also an activity that could bring you a bit closer to your personal values. And on another example might be, you find that connection activities with other people are also activities that bring you enjoyment as well. And what's important to really keep in mind is that these activities work for you, and they're very personal and meaningful to yourself. So now we'd like to invite you all to complete another survey. Um, so the question is, how has your balance of meaningful and ACE activities changed since the end of the circuit breaker until now? Okay, yeah, we'll give a few minutes for people to answer this question. So as you're answering the question and you're thinking about, your answer, just kind of like thinking about the first poll that you guys did about your mood from the circuit breaker until now, like, really thinking about how, doing more or doing less of these activities actually affected your mood as well. Like, do you find that it made you feel a bit better, or do you find that it made you feel, a bit lower? Okay, right. Okay, so yeah, so we can see from the poll results that most of you found that there was not much changes in the number of activities, and some of you are actually engaging in more meaningful activities and more ACE activities since the circuit breaker ended, and a few of you are doing less meaningful and less ACE activities. So really, like, the point of the poll is, I guess, to kind of get you thinking about how this has impacted your mood, like personally. For example, those of you who find that you're doing more ACE activities, but maybe your mood like didn't really improve much, then maybe we can start to think about better ways to incorporate such activities into your routine, or perhaps about how other parts of the vicious flower might be playing into your low mood as well, which we will go into in a while. Okay. Okay, so how does behavioral activation work? So one easy way to remember how to use behavioral activation for yourself is by using the 4 Ps. So the first P is to pick an activity. So, start with coming up with a list of activities that you personally find meaningful or that gives you a sense of like ACE. Then pick a one or a few to do. It might be good to set some personal goals based on what you value to help kind of give you kind of a sense of direction for what you want to start with or what you want to start doing. Then the next step, or the next P, is to actually plan the activity into your schedule. So like to decide when you want to do the activity, how you want to do the activity, and with whom you want to do the activity with, and which days and times work best for you to do them as well. It's also good to try and balance like these activities. For example, if you incorporate too many achievement-based activities, it can feel like maybe too much work and no play. But on the other hand, if you incorporate like, say, too many enjoyable or pleasurable activities, then you might find that it could be a bit unhelpful if it means that we are neglecting our responsibilities, which might then pile up and become more overwhelming in the future. So this here is an example of an activity diary that you can use to incorporate activities into your schedule. As you can see, like, it really breaks down like things according to the time and according to the day of the week. And there's like some instructions on the top as well to kind of guide you through rating your sense of achievement, your sense of closeness, and your sense of enjoyment in the day, as well as monitor your mood. So monitoring your mood will be quite, important to help you see how each different activity affects your mood, whether it makes you feel better or it makes you feel worse. Yeah, so you can see some examples down here as well of ACE activities, and we can send this out at the end of the presentation as well for your reference and to use. Okay, so the next step or the next P is to perform. So really, it's just about doing it. So like Natalie mentioned earlier, action can come before motivation as well. So when you start to do things, then slowly your motivation can actually start to return. And try to monitor your mood after doing these activities as well. Like how did doing these activities make you feel, and again, like which activities improve your mood and which activities actually make you feel low. And the last P is to problem solve. So when you plan to do activities, it's very common and very normal that things don't go according to plan, because maybe something came up in the week that made it very difficult for you to do. And in truth, depression can be very tiring, and there are going to be days where you find it especially difficult to do these activities. So it might be helpful to think about ways that you can make it easier for yourself to do. So for example, is there a need to try the activity on a different day or a different time? Is there a need to, for example, change the activity that you plan to do? Like maybe the activity that you chose was a bit too overwhelming for you, and it might work better for you to choose an activity that's a bit more manageable and a bit smaller, but still meaningful to yourself. Or you could even consider, like, say, getting a friend or family member to kind of encourage you to do the activities, or to do the activities together with you, and that might be quite helping you in problem solving some of the obstacles that you face throughout the week. And then after you go through the 4 Ps, then you just the next thing to do is to just repeat the process. So continue doing or adding more of the activities that improve your mood, and do less of the activities that make your mood worse, and think about whether you had any difficulties doing these activities. So when you're trying out this behavioral activation, it's quite good to keep in mind that it is a process, and for some people it might take a bit more time to start to get into it. You can think of it as a bit like overcoming a hill. So like maybe the first part of it is quite hard to climb because it's quite steep, but if you encourage yourself to keep at it with the help of setting goals and with the help of planning and just doing, then slowly you'll be able to get to the top, and from there things will slowly get easier for you as well. So with practice, you'll slowly be able to get more out of your life, and the enjoyment, meaning, and connection, and a sense of achievement will start to return as well. And as Natalie mentioned earlier as well, to celebrate the small victories. It can be anything that lifts your mood and anything that you feel that you've accomplished. So in summary, we covered quite a lot of things. So we'd actually like to hear from you about this behavior activation, like how you personally have coped with your low mood, and what activities do you personally like to do? Like, are there any activities that you've practiced that you found helpful, or activities that you plan to do after hearing this talk? Yeah, if you could visit menti.com or scan the QR code and enter the code 774227, then there will be a question there where you can kind of key in your responses and your suggestions for activities. Yeah.
How are the responses, Diana?
Okay, so we have a couple of responses. Sorry, I'm
Okay.
just trying to figure out how to share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do a share screen swap here.
Yes.
Bear
Okay.
with us.
Hold on. Okay, so we got a couple of responses already. I think like 13 people have responded, so we can afford to give a bit more time for other people to respond. Okay, so it seems like we already have like quite a number of really good suggestions that maybe it'll be quite helpful to bounce off some ideas from each other and get some ideas from the responses as well. And it seems like one of the biggest things is exercise, which is good to hear. It's good to hear considering we were just talking about exercise earlier. Okay. Help others, talking with my parents. Okay.
I think some really good ideas there that if you want, you can screenshot this slide, or we can also send it with the activity schedule after the talk if you have to your registration email, so that you can refer and get good ideas from everybody else.
Okay, maybe we'll give another like 1 minute for the rest of you to respond. Okay, volunteering seems to be like another significant thing that helps as well, which is really nice.
Really meaningful, right? Like the volunteering
Yeah.
activity really gets you connecting and active. But I'm not watching psychology videos like this webinar. Really learning new things about depression and mental health today as well.
Yeah, we hope that this talk will help to lift your mood as well.
Yeah, so if you have just take a quick screenshot, and I think we're gonna have some time left for questions.
Okay,
And we'll also share this with you at the end of our talk.
Okay, yeah. Okay, how do I stop?
So thanks for responding to that.
Okay, yeah, you all give really good suggestions.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on, these are some activities that we, other activities that you can try. You might find some of this quite familiar, but you can refer to this slide as well to get some ideas and some suggestions. Okay, so I guess to kind of summarize the talk, we talked about a lot of the different things that add to like the vicious flower of depression, and we talked about like many different things that can kind of help you break out of the vicious flower and create a less vicious flower like the one that we see here. Like firstly is to reduce rumination and overthinking by catching yourself early and focusing on the present or thinking about problem solving. And then the next is physical exercise. And motivating from the outside in. And the next is kind of being aware of like your traps, and instead of avoiding engaging in activities or engaging in positive coping. And the last one is I guess trying to achieve a balance of ACE activities might help you as well. Yeah. So if you find that you're experiencing symptoms of depression, but these symptoms are quite overwhelming and quite distressing for you, then do contact some of the helplines that we have here, the National Care Hotline, the Viria Counselling Hotline, or the Samaritans of Singapore. And if you feel that you are in any immediate danger or risk, do contact the emergency medical services at 995, or approach the A&E department for your nearest hospital as well.
I think we have around 10 minutes or a bit more for question time. So, that's a lot of questions. Okay. So we will try our best to answer your questions as best that we can. I think moderator said that we have like 2 pages. Okay. So, okay, first question. We have, do people with depression know that they have depression? I think this is definitely something that if you are finding that you are struggling with certain your emotions or with negative thoughts and really feeling those symptoms that we discussed earlier and really overlaps with what we have talked about with depression today, maybe that's something that you might want to find out more about or to speak to someone about, just to see if you have depression. But I guess importantly, it's also knowing that it's also determining how much this is affecting your life. And if you find that you're still able to cope and still able to go about without much distress, then I think definitely that's still a good thing. But if you're finding that it's really too overwhelming, or you're finding it really hard to function at work or at school or just at home, and might need a bit more support, then it's good to reach out or also to try out some of these things that we talked about today, just to manage depression. Yeah, Diana, have anything to add to the first question?
I think what Natalie said is quite true. It's really about, I guess, thinking like for yourself, like how manageable like these symptoms are, and maybe some people might not really be aware. I guess some people might not really be aware that they have they have depression, because maybe it's not as I guess not as distressing or not as really overwhelming for them, and they feel like they can manage it themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we could go to the next question. Does it mean that we don't have to fight depression but to live with it? Yeah, I think definitely there's really a lot very different ways on how people might want to live with or manage depression, be it fighting, um, I guess fighting off the negative thoughts or fighting the feelings. But sometimes it's also really hard to shake off, and it's a bit like that black dog. Sometimes it gets bigger and gets smaller, and there are certain days where these depressed feelings might be overwhelming, but other days where it might be more manageable. So yes, in a way, a lot of people are living with it, and just being able to manage the size of the black dog and depression.
Yeah, I guess it's quite like a delicate balance between,
Mm,
I guess, managing like really, really distressing symptoms or like negative thoughts and rumination. And I guess kind of like on some days, in a way, living with it and coping well with it and kind of, I guess, accepting it in a way as well.
mm. Yeah, and also kind of nice lead on to the next question about professional help. Is that always required? Um, yeah, I guess it's really depending on how you're coping and how distressing and how you're functioning at the moment. I think with if just attending a talk like this, just understanding more and like applying some of the techniques that we talk about today can help with managing your mood, then that's really good. But if it's really overwhelming and you're finding it really hard, like you've tried so many things and still struggling, then might be also good to consider professional help in this case also if you're finding yourself really worn out, really tired from trying really hard to fight depression or manage your mood. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really depending on what you need and also your readiness
Mm-hmm.
to seek professional help.
Yeah.
Next question, depression due to genes or character, like being an introvert or pessimist?
Mm. This is a really, really interesting question. I think Natalie has mentioned a bit earlier before about, I guess, like the factors that might kind of contribute to depression, and really it's kind of like a combination of factors,
Mm,
biological, psychological, social, and they all kind of interact in a way. It's usually like not just one factor that kind of leads to depression.
mm, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
like introvert might, I guess, relating to like the amount of connection that you need from others, or maybe might need less than an extrovert. So if you're finding yourself very like having to meet a lot of people or like feeling very burnt out from like connecting socially, feeling really bad for yourself, that might interact with depression in that way. Or pessimism and thinking a lot of like being trapped in a more ruminative process. I think that yeah, so Diana said it's like lots of things that can interact and combine with each other that keeps depression going or even uh, contribute to depression. So it's really hard to tease out one specific question, one specific factor that causes depression. So, and going on, the next is depression the same as low self-esteem or low sense of self-control? I think there are some similarities and some differences as well. Yeah, I guess low self-esteem is also around kind of feeling um, whether you are able to think positively about yourself or um, whether maybe not more, I guess more of a how low self-esteem affects you. If you find yourself like avoiding things or feeling unable to do things or feeling uh, embarrassed or scared to fail or making new friends, I think those are quite related to self-esteem, but depression might be more around feeling low, like loss of pleasure, motivation.
Mm.
Yeah, some overlap there.
Some overlaps, yeah. And in a way sometimes like low esteem might kind of lead to symptoms of depression as well, kind of like summarizing what
Mm,
Natasha has said. um yeah, but yeah, there are differences and there are similarities. Yeah.
mm, okay. So what comes first, physical health or depression, mental health?
Mm.
Yeah, again, I think it's really a tricky one.
Mm.
That's why you kind of don't really focus on actually what causes the depression, but also just focusing on what keeps it going. If physical health is kind of like making you feel lower. Not doing things is making you, or having physical health issues is making you feel lower, and having negative thoughts, then that can interact with each other in a two-way, the bi-directional manner. So yeah, it's quite hard to say. But
Mm,
also for some people, having physical health issues might precede their depression, and that's a clearer kind of like timeline for thinking
mm,
about how their depression developed.
yeah, I guess they both kind of I guess physical health or like maybe some physical symptoms might be a symptom of depression as well. I guess to like a less extreme extent compared to like a really serious like physical health difficulty. So yeah, like Natasha mentioned, kind of like a bi-directional relationship between the two.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. I think the next question just sounds like um around like somebody is talking about their experiences about losing control and being panicked and really feeling awkward. Um yeah, feels very hard to explain, and wanting to know how to manage these symptoms. Yeah, I think just saying that like sounds like what you're going through is really difficult, and it's really confusing to think about why you're experiencing these symptoms. And things first step that you're reaching out and just letting us know how you are feeling. But I'm just wondering if it might be good to maybe talk with us a bit more, just to get a sense of like what's going on for you actually, just to get a deeper understanding of your experiences. So I think if you are yeah, it might be good to call our counseling helpline, or to just drop us a message after the talk, and we can see how we can help you to manage your experiences.
Mm.
Yeah. And
Okay.
okay, what if the individual doesn't like to exercise? Okay, I'm guilty of this.
I think me too. Uh,
uh,
but
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just saying that like it's really we don't have to do all the things in the petal. It's just really noticing what works for us and actually what affects our mood the most. I think me exercising or not exercising doesn't really affect how I'm feeling. But I guess it's really individualized to you and actually what might work for you. If you don't like to exercise, I think that's, and your mood is not really affected by exercise. I think that there's a few other things to try as well to help manage
Yeah,
how you're feeling.
yeah,
Yeah, but if you can just give it a go, see how that goes for you.
yeah.
Okay,
Maybe,
fine.
yeah, maybe it would be helpful to, I guess, like start a bit smaller. Maybe like going out for just like
Mm,
a stroll or like a walk, like in a way that's kind of moving your body also, or I guess kind of like stretching in your room or like walking around your room, or maybe like doing a few jumping jacks, like something that's quite manageable for you. Then that might kind of help as well.
mm, okay. So we're going to answer the last two questions really quickly. I engage in activities but end up getting triggered by my friends, and it makes me feel worse.
Mm,
Yeah, I think, oh, that's a tricky situation to be stuck in, especially if you're trying to engage yourself with activities. Um, yeah, I think it's a bit like that problem solving that you mentioned, Diana. I was like, the fourth P. It's like how can we actually enhance our participation in these activities and not feel worse about it. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It is quite tricky because I think it's quite a common experience where like
Mm,
you feel like you want to do something for yourself, but then maybe like other people, the people around you, like makes it very difficult for you to do things for yourself. So I guess perhaps yeah, perhaps thinking about the problem solving, like maybe you can think of sit down and kind of think of ways where perhaps you could try to, I don't know, maybe communicate this with your friends and family, or try activities that might be easier for you to do in the absence of your friends and family, or in the absence of your triggers lah, basically. Like that might be quite a helpful way to work around it.
mm,
Mm.
okay. And just the last question, is medication the magic pill gold standard for the treatment of depression? Yeah, so for the treatment of depression, there are a few like well-researched and evidence-backed treatments. Antidepressants being one of them, but also equally effective are more psychosocial interventions like therapy. So the most evidence-based treatments for depression would be cognitive behavioral therapy and also something called interpersonal therapy for adults that will help with depression. And also, if for people who are experiencing really severe depression or high levels of symptoms, even a combination of medication and psychotherapy just to support you with that. So it really depends on what you're going through and also to get seek advice from a professional for this. Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing if there's like we can like answer some stuff together. Okay.
When I do activities, I keep having depressive thoughts like I'm not doing enough or I'm not worth doing this. How do we counter this? Okay. I think it can be a very difficult experience because with depression we have a lot of like these negative thoughts, and one thing that we didn't really manage to cover in this talk today is how negative thoughts kind of affect like our mood and how they kind of maintain our low mood as well and affect our engagement in activities. So I guess one of the things that might be quite helpful is like, I guess I'm thinking about what you talked about, kind of like catching the cycle of negative thought earlier, like breaking out of the rumination and kind of trying to make might kind of like help stop you, prevent you from like going into like a negative cycle of like negative thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we might I think future talks also talk about how we might want to counter these negative thoughts a bit in a bit more detail. So stay tuned if you're wanting to learn more about that. Also acknowledging that like definitely it's very frustrating when you get the drive and then it kind of dies down after a while. So I think it's a bit about like acknowledging those moments where you had a success of experiencing that motivation, and also kind of knowing that you don't have to be at 100% drive all the time, and it's just working our way slowly up step by step to find the drive and motivation, and that's okay. Yeah.
So like I guess usually people kind of think of progress as like that, but actually it's kind of like up and down all the time, and they're going to be
So like,
like so it is really, it can be really difficult lah, but I guess like Natasha mentioned, it's I guess like it's trying to celebrate the small successes and just really like keeping at it.
Okay, I think just realize that we are running
out of time.
So just we can pick one last question.
Okay,
Diana, you can pick one.
Okay. If someone is not willing to do any activities or engage with anyone, then how can I help? I guess the first thing to do is that's really important is to kind of acknowledge that it's really it's really difficult for them to engage in these activities lah, and depression can really impact them like very negatively and make it very difficult for them to do these things. So I think it takes a lot of understanding and a lot of patience, and I guess a lot of like kind of like kind encouragement and slow encouragement, and I guess kind of a bit like what we were talking about before as well. If there's a way that you can do things together with them, like even just being with them, or like spending like a bit of your time with them, then it might slowly kind of help them get a sense of connection, and help them kind of like see that doing things together with other people might lift their mood.
Yeah, I think even it just sounds like you really want to support the person with kind of activating them. So I think just having that awareness and having that understanding really can go a long way with you supporting a loved one or someone who might be struggling with low mood and depression. Yeah, I think just summarizing to say that like coping or like managing low mood is definitely not a super easy task, and there's a lot of either coping strategies or maybe more intense support that might be needed for some people just to manage this difficulty. So we encourage you to if you are still finding yourself struggling or feeling a lot of distress and feeling a lot of difficulties in managing, just also reach out, as we are here to support you in this like trying time. So we're just going to sum up by thanking Temasek Foundation, and also to just share with you this website. I think some of you might have signed up from the stayprepared.sg site, which is filled with lots of materials like articles, email support service, and also our upcoming events to help to support people with their emotional distress during this time. So do check out the website, my mental stayprepared.sg/my mental health. And also going to uh, let you guys know about our upcoming talk next Tuesday. Let's talk about mental health, and we're going to be talking about social anxiety during COVID. That's happening next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Okay, and lastly, we really want to thank you guys for joining us tonight, and we really appreciate any feedback that you have for us. So please feel free to scan the QR code or follow the link that our moderator will be sharing in the group chat, just to help complete a really short feedback form on how you found this talk today, so that we can make future talks be as useful for you as possible, or anything that you would like to be different or that we can enhance for your understanding.